He's the serial killer who went on TV's The Dating Game in the middle of his killing spree. Now 2020 has spoken with his first victim, who was only 8 years old when she managed to escape.
Rodney Alcala was born in August 1943 in San Antonio, Texas, to Mexican-American parents. His father's name was Raul Alcala Bucor, and his mother's name was Ana Maria Gutierrez. Alcala had 2 sisters and a brother. In 1951, when Alcala was 8 years old, his father moved the family to Mexico, but then left them alone 3 years later. This left his mother to raise 4 children on her own. In 1954, Alcala's mother moved with her children to the Los Angeles area in California. As a teenager, Alcala attended various private schools and graduated from Montebello High School. He was considered an academically gifted student and was reasonably popular among his fellows. His family supported him as well. After finishing high school, 17-year-old Alcala joined the U.S. Army in 1961 to become a commando. He served as a clerk in the Army. When Alcala was in the Army, his commanding officer noticed that he acted manipulative, cruel, and refused to follow orders. Alcala got in trouble several times while in the military for attacking young women. In 1964, after what was described as a nervous breakdown, Alcala went AWOL from Fort Bragg and took a ride back to his mother's house in California. He was evaluated by an Army psychiatrist who diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder and estimated his IQ to be 135. Due to this psychiatric assessment, the Army medically discharged Alcala that same year. After leaving the military, Alcala enrolled at the University of California, Los Angeles School of Fine Arts and later studied film at New York University under director Roman Polanski. In 1968, Donald Hines saw Alcala take 8-year-old Tali Shapiro to his Hollywood apartment. Alcala offered her a ride, saying he knew her parents. He then raped and beat Shapiro with a steel bar, leaving her in a coma. Alcala fled before police arrived. A warrant was issued for Alcala's arrest on charges of attempted murder, rape, and kidnapping of Shapiro. But Alcala evaded the law by leaving California and enrolling at NYU, using the alias John Berger. In 1971, he got a job as a counselor at an arts camp for children in New Hampshire using a similar fake name. During this time, he also began working at the Blue Cross Blue Shield Insurance Company offices, where he worked alongside another serial killer named Richard Cottingham, without either man apparently knowing about the other's crimes. That June, the body of 23-year-old flight attendant Cornelia Crilly was found raped and murdered in her Manhattan apartment. She had been strangled with her own bobby socks. Police now believe Crilly may have accepted Alcala's help moving furniture into her new apartment before he killed her. The crime went unsolved until 2011, when DNA evidence would link back to Alcala. In early 1971, the FBI put Alcala on their list of 10 most wanted escapees. This was because of the warrant for attacking Tali Shapiro. A few months later, 2 kids at the New Hampshire art camp saw Alcala's wanted poster at the post office. They recognized him. The FBI arrested Alcala and sent him to California to face charges. But the main witness, Shapiro, had moved with her family to Mexico. Without her, prosecutors only charged Alcala with child molestation for what he did to the 8-year-old girl. He was convicted of the lesser charges in 1972 and sentenced to 3 years in jail. Alcala served 17 months before being paroled in 1974. Almost immediately after his release, he was rearrested for assaulting a 13-year-old girl he had offered a ride to, who was on her way to school. The victim was identified in court records as Julie J. Alcala. Served another 2 years behind bars before being paroled again in 1976. After Alcala got out of prison for the second time in 1977, his parole officer made the unusual decision to let him travel to New York City. Alcala was known to be violent and likely to run away. Just a week after getting back to Manhattan, Alcala murdered a 23-year-old woman named Ellen Hover. Ellen's father owned a Hollywood nightclub. She was the goddaughter of Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. Ellen was last seen on July 15, 1977, before she disappeared. Alcala used the fake name John Berger to set up a photo shoot with Ellen on the day she went missing. When questioned by police, Alcala admitted knowing Ellen but was not arrested due to lack of evidence as her body had not been found. Ellen's remains were eventually discovered buried near the Rockefeller estate, where Alcala had taken photos of another woman who survived. Based on his history and Ellen's datebook, NYPD now believes Alcala killed her within days of arriving in New York. After returning to Los Angeles in 1978, Alcala briefly worked at the LA Times. He convinced many young men and women he was a fashion photographer to take explicit photos, including underage subjects. Police suspect unidentified photos may show more victims. In June 1979, 12-year-old Robin Samso from Huntington Beach, California, disappeared after leaving her home on her way to ballet class. Her decomposing body was found 12 days later in the Sierra Madre foothills. She had been raped, beaten, and stabbed with a knife multiple times. Friends of Robin told police a stranger had approached them on the beach prior to her disappearance, asking to take their pictures. Detectives circulated a composite sketch of the photographer suspect based on witness descriptions. Alcala's parole officer recognized the sketch as Alcala. Detectives searching Alcala's mother's home uncovered a receipt for a storage locker Alcala had rented in Seattle. Inside the locker, police found a pair of gold ball earrings that were identified as belonging to Robin Samso. Alcala was arrested in July 1979 and held without bail for Samso's murder. Alcala went on trial for the Samso murder in 1980 and was found guilty in May, sentenced to death in June. But his conviction was overturned by the California Supreme Court in 1984 because the jury had been allowed to hear about his prior sex crimes, which was deemed unfairly prejudicial. A second trial took place in 1986, which omitted mention of Alcala's criminal past. He was again convicted and received a death sentence in August 1986. But the second conviction was also later overturned in 2001 by a U.S. District Court judge, who ruled Alcala's rights had been violated by a witness who was not allowed to testify fully in his defense. In 2003, Alcala's DNA collected under a new law matched samples from two 1977 LA murders, Jill Barkham and Georgia Wickstead. More evidence also tied Alcala to two other 1978 LA murders, Charlotte Lamb and Jill Parenteau. The evidence was found in his Seattle storage locker. Prosecutors moved to consolidate all 5 murder charges from the 1970s in one trial against Alcala in 2003. His defense tried to oppose the joinder, arguing that a jury might find it hard to have reasonable doubt if they heard so many murder charges at once. But the state Supreme Court ruled in favor of the prosecution, allowing the joint trial with the 5 murders to proceed. Alcala was his own lawyer in his third trial in 2010. He testified claiming no memory of the murders. He speculated someone else killed Samso and disputed earring evidence by showing his 1978 dating game appearance wearing earrings. After the 2010 conviction, police released 120 alluring photos of unidentified women and children found in Alcala's possession to seek the public's help identifying them and determining if any were additional victims. Approximately 21 women came forward to identify themselves from the photos, and several families suspected missing loved ones, but none were positively matched as victims until 2016. Investigators believe the death toll could be as high as 130 victims based on the disturbing photo collection. Despite his death sentence in California, in 2011 Alcala was charged in New York for 2 more murders from the 1970s. He pled guilty to avoid another trial. The convictions ensured he would never be free. Alcala appealed his death verdict for years until he died in prison in 2021 at age 77. Due to his photo collection, authorities believe there were likely many more unknown victims.